Welcome to You Are the Media Now, a podcast about digital communication strategies that go beyond legacy media and empower businesses, brands, and individuals looking to land big impact on platforms that build empires. And now, here are your hosts, Scott Mitchell and yours truly, Ryan Welton. Well, howdy, Scott. How are you doing, man? It's been a couple of weeks.
Well, I'm 0 for 4 against the NFC North. I'm not really crazy about that.
Well, the Packers are in the playoffs. This is a good thing.
Playoffs, but can't beat the Eagles, can't beat the Lions, can't beat the Vikings. It's going to be a short season. But look at your head, and right, you talk about disappointments. I mean, so close, Ryan. Your alma mater, so close.
So I watch a lot of Canadian football, and one of the things that CFL teams do well, and that is a competitive advantage, is that they collect points. They don't mind getting the field goal as you go on through the game. 3, 3, 3, 3. It adds up. Arizona State left a lot of points on the board. There was the targeting no call at the end. Lots of little issues, but if there ever were such a thing as a moral victory, Arizona State got it in that loss against Texas. Cam Scattaboo, his platform has risen. The Arizona State Sun Devils and Kenny Dillingham, their platform has risen. It wasn't a bad showing, and I just hope for the Sooners, as a Sooner-born, Sooner-bred guy, that we're in the position to be one of 12 next year.
Well, let's hope so. And we have a guest that's going to do some Boomer Sooner, but she also is a Georgia Bulldog. So it's
a Georgia Bulldog. I bet. Mighty, mighty Bulldogs.
All right. Are you, well, let's start with your holidays.
Yeah.
Trouble?
Sure did. Went to Charlotte. Charlotte was surprisingly cold this time of year. We we visited our in-laws out there. I've got 2 brothers-in-law and 2 sisters-in-law in Charlotte. My mother and father-in-law went out there. We all just gathered for Christmas, and we went and saw the lights at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which was very, very cool. I got to meet with a former colleague out in Charlotte and have breakfast with him. Charlotte is a very nice place. It was my second time to the area, third time in North Carolina in just the past couple of years. Love it out there. It was pretty cool. How about you?
We stayed close by. I'm wondering, you saw a fireworks show, right? How do they do that in Charlotte? Is it like a NASCAR deal where they come up with we're going to put them firecrackers going in? We were gripping real good there and put a half a wedge around in that one firecracker and it went right. And the whole thing's really doing good. You know how it is with NASCAR. They're always advertising something, right?
I think the thing that was most fascinating to me about and this was my second time on a NASCAR track. I had actually gotten to sit in the pits at Texas Motor Speedway when I worked for Love's a few years back, is the angle of the road itself. It's not flat. It's not close to flat. It's like 30 to 45 degrees. It's crazy. We were on a party bus, and we saw some of the kids in other vehicles try to get out and run up it. It was just, they did not allow that. They soon shoot everybody back to their vehicles, but it was just very cool. And they had lights all throughout I forgot what you call it, the parking areas in the middle. And you just went around it over and over, and it's just, they're massive structures.
I also wonder, because you're out there where the sky is really blue, and I'm wondering how people are taking that there's going to be a football coach at UNC who talks like this. We're going to win the game. And, he's got $1 gazillion, obviously, to go to North Carolina, not Texas, not Georgia, not Alabama, a basketball school. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to Andrew Brandt's podcast the other day. This is it's so interesting to me and such a red flag for sports reporters, business reporters about what's going on in NCAA men's football, which pays for everything, right?
Right.
And Bill Belichick goes to UNC. When I started seeing the stories, I just didn't believe it.
Right. Is he going to be able to recruit? We know that he can coach. He's not going to have a Tom Brady. He's going to have players who are going to want to sit out of bowl games. And I just wonder how his level of gravity and seriousness is going to play with the younger generation. I don't know. It could be John Wooden-esque, or it might be over in 3 years. I really honestly don't know. When I look at the prototypical college coach right now, I look at a Marcus Freeman, a Dan Lanning. They're young, they're good looking, they're hip, they're energetic, they're stylish. It's kind of a vibe as much as it is anything else. Or you have the Southern type of coach, your Nick Saban, your Kirby Smart. Not necessarily Brian Kelly. I don't know how long that's going to last in LSU. But you have your Southern ball coach, or you have your young ball coach. I don't know where Bill Belichick fits in that mold just yet.
Well, here's another name from the past. You talk about the young hip coaches, Pete Carroll. He's going to be getting back in, right?
Right, with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. So the whole thing, which, by the way, the Packers are going to whoop the dog out of the Bears this weekend. But it's just, when I saw Pete Carroll and Belichick, and here's Saban walking away, here come these geezers, geezers are my age, starting to come back in. So what's going on? It's a business story. It's not just a sports story. And, I'm reading that Bill Belichick's going to set up basically a farm system for NFL. So if you're, kids that want to go someplace, get your kid in the NFL, yeah, you may think about
as we consider the possibility that teams disassociate from universities, whether lightly or for real. I mean, you could see an Oklahoma State partnership with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know how that might work. It could really become a farm system.
Well, I'm not a Dallas Cowboys fan, but I want to say that she's Jerry, if he's listening. Extend Dak for 10 years, the maximum contract. I'm all for it. Sign him up for 15 years, because as a Packer fan, that goes.
Right. Sure do.
All right, we're going to freeze to death this weekend. I wouldn't watch on television, but, what are you thinking about 2025? We've got a great guest in a little bit. She's going to share her predictions about You Are the Media Now.
Mm-hmm.
When we had Dr. Gaddie on back a few months ago in the campaign, which we all were, yours truly, I get people asking me, I'm watching all this data, and, you've made me a data guy. And I'm like, Harris is going to win.
Same. That's what I thought too.
No.
That's not what happened. Everybody was kind of wrong. We were reading the tea leaves and they led us astray. But I think the predictions that we're going to have here are a little bit more longer term and a little bit more obvious, and maybe not related to politics in such a way that we would be fooled again. I think when you look at the economics of this, it's going to be the data, and the data is speaking loud and clear on some of this.
Yeah, my 34-year-old, to give you an idea of my age. I asked him 1 week before the election, and I said, what do you think? And he goes, well, he's a Trump supporter. He goes, well, my boy's going to win. I said, okay. How do you know? Well, I was listening to Theo Vaughn, and he hadn't watched TV in 2 years. All right, maybe Netflix, right? But he was taking in Joe Rogan, taking in Theo Vaughn, all of the non-traditional media that Trump was showing up, and Harris was a shooting, right? I mean, he got it right. So, now my oldest, I guess, will take my place. It's just an amazing time of change. So, well, we're going to freeze this weekend. Are you ready, Ryan? Have you, got yourself ready?
All right. We freeze up a little bit. Are we back?
Yeah. In fact, that was early. I didn't think the freeze was going to hit until later this weekend.
Oh, right. And it is. And by the way, for folks who are in Kansas, Missouri, all the way across, it's going to be, it's not, from what I've heard, it's not really a true polar vortex. It's just a really big cold front. We're in La Nina right now. I think we're going to shift out of that for the spring a little bit. I don't know that it's going full El Nino, but I'm still not convinced we're going to have that much of a winter this year. I think we're going to have a few cold shots. I'm not a meteorologist. What do I know? But I also don't love cold weather, so there's a lot of wish casting. I want it to come here and then go away.
I got you. All right. What shall we talk about next that has not to do with the weather?
Well, let's make some predictions. And I know we're going to bring on Dr. Gaddie in a second, but I thought maybe you and I could talk about our predictions and then hear from the expert. And where I wanted to start was with AI. And I think AI is something that that's a no-brainer. But what I'm seeing in newsrooms and what I'm seeing in businesses is truly going to transform everything from the front office to the back office to sales. We are starting to move, prediction number one, from an ecosystem where AI is helpful in rewriting your emails and crafting newsletters and being a good content thought partner to the creation of agents that are going to do everything from create call center scripts, HR policies, maybe even do basic accounting. I mean, their agents are going to be used for just about everything, which will either free professionals up to be more strategic and creative, or it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs. And I think that this is going to move faster than we ever imagined. For those who are going into consultation like myself, finding a way to help businesses navigate AI and get comfortable with it is something that I think is going to be super profitable. That is prediction number one. Prediction number two, I'm a little bit more sure about. I was just reading, and I listen to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk, but the live shopping marketplace in China is expected to be worth about 5 trillion yuan. I don't even know how to say that. Y-U-A-N. Yuan? 5 trillion. That is equal to about $683 billion. We see evidence of live shopping for retail in what has been happening on TikTok. Now, I'll get to prediction number three in a second. However, I am a believer that whether it be inside of actual brick and mortar locations in the mall, the outlet store, or an outlet area, you're going to see cordoned off areas where live video is happening. I went to a Braves game a couple of years ago. Truist Park, beautiful. It's Truist Park, but it's in an area called Battery Park. Beautiful area. And after the game, before and after the game, you could see broadcasters sitting there doing a live show talking about the game. This is kind of what I'm talking about. If you go into a Best Buy, there's going to be an area over there where somebody's going to be talking about gadgets, showing how they work, and selling them, connected to an inventory. And if it's not in the brick and mortar locations, and we've got a guest in a couple of weeks who's going to tell us more about this, they're going to be renting studio spaces. Imagine the thing that Matt Payne had down at Prairie Surf, big soundstage. But imagine that for businesses to be able to rent in little 10 by 10 studio rooms where you're able to convert that into your own live stream studio. And essentially, you're selling to the world coincidentally with whatever you're doing in your brick and mortar. It's going to be a real thing. And it's going to happen this year. I wouldn't be surprised if by Christmas this year, we start to see this take off. Number three, and of course, I mentioned TikTok before. I do think that TikTok will ultimately survive. That's prediction number three. However, a little damper on that. Chief Justice John Roberts was in the news, I believe, today saying that he was not a big fan of messing with court decisions ahead of the installation and the inauguration of President-elect Trump, which sort of signals to me that they might not allow for a delay in the January 10th hearing over TikTok and may just uphold what the lower court says. So those are my three predictions. AI, retail live shopping, and the ultimate survival of TikTok, even if it's a deal that happens in the summer or the fall. What about you, Scott?
Well, my prediction that dovetails off of yours, number one, Donald Trump's going to find a way to survive TikTok. And going to cut it. He may even buy the thing. Who knows how this is all going to work.
Right.
But it'll be complicated to the point that he'll get involved, be a hero, get rid of Truth Social, and be involved in that somehow. Second thing is that journalists are going to have to start bringing value to the people that they're reporting on. First off, they're losing audiences like crazy. Let's take an example. I think I may have mentioned earlier, which is the whole situation. I think I predicted this publicly on Your Vote Counts about 2 weeks ago, number one, which is this NCAA football situation with the money, the Supreme Court hearing, the NIL, the fact that the colleges are going to have to start doing some antitrust work. they're going to engage in antitrust. They better go get some antitrust protections in Congress. This is not a sports story. And so for so many of these stories, journalists are going to have to figure out that if you stay in that one niche and you only report on sports, and I mentioned Nathan Brandt earlier, who's really the only guy I know that is out there talking about he's got a podcast called Business of Sports. So this is one of those stories that's not getting covered because the business people don't think it's a sports story. The people think it's a business story. There's litigation involved, so it's a legal story. Nobody's taking ownership of this. I think it's the biggest story of the year, maybe outside of the inauguration of Donald Trump. So that's going to happen. And part of B would be, you better start bringing some value. Everybody's out there that are churning away on this. We see influencers have more influence, no pun intended, over old-time journalism. And old-time journalism is going to have to catch up fast. And that makes it difficult in the free marketplace of ideas to separate the wheat from the chaff. I'm already seeing it in some stories that are going to be happening in Oklahoma this year, dealing with energy transmission. There is right now, I mean, you weigh into that story, you're going to have a detox, have somebody come along with the power washer to wipe off all the hooey. It's just terrible. And so it makes it very difficult. And the gatekeeper's gone, right? We've talked about that happening for so long. But the level of, fill in the blank that's circulating right now on transmission of power and through Oklahoma and above and below Oklahoma and the states around. Governor said he's going to take Oklahoma out of the SPP, Southwest Power Pool. Energy, we're an energy state, for crying out loud, and nobody's covering it. So that makes it easy for the charlatans to come in and start getting their hooks into it. So it's going to take some, I guess my third prediction is that consumers are going to have to get coached up in a hurry to separate the what from the good stuff,
Right. It's going to take a lot of us to help guide them along the way. It's almost as if you'll have people who are primary source reporters, secondary source reporters, and analysts to sort of, describe in the most transparent, fair way possible what's actually true and what's actually baloney.
It's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
Well, that's my three.
Well, those are excellent predictions. I think all three of those are coming true as we speak. I think the ones I've talked about, we're going to see that come to fruition. I certainly hope so. You always want to be right. But I'm really interested in what Dr. Kim Gaddie has to say and what her predictions are. And I hope that they are way different than ours. I mean, if we're all agreeing, how fun is that?
Yeah, let's do some magic here, okay? There she is.
I like your magic. That's awesome.
Dr. Gaddie,
thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Well, it's been a lot of fun sitting here listening to you guys go back and forth. I'm listening to your all's predictions. And as we were chatting before we went on air, it's like, and sadly, my prediction about a Georgia Bulldog national championship again is not going to come true. So, but, I told you guys, I'm pretty pleased. Won the SEC championship, got to beat Texas twice. Was not looking forward to the possibility of playing them for a third time. So, but no, you guys have had some really interesting predictions to talk about.
Do you any initial thoughts on what we said? Anything that you vehemently disagree with?
I don't know that I disagree with any of it. I think I'd probably, listening to him like, well, I'm coming at this from more of a stay in my lane, digital marketing, social media marketing expertise background. And so I think there's a lot of overlap that ties into, even though you all talked about things outside the realm of that, that relate to a lot of it. So I'm not going to disagree. I think I'm going to extend it in a slightly different manner.
Let's revise and extend her remarks.
But revise. Can I revise and extend my remarks from when we did the election? One, but you can take all the best information, you can take all the best data, and at the end of the day, we said it mattered who showed up, and that's what happened. It mattered who showed up.
We all know who showed up.
We know who showed up.
For those that may be meeting you for the first time, in your expertise over at the Price College in the field of digital and advertising. Give our listeners and viewers a little background on Dr. Kim Gaddie.
For me? Oh, I thought you wanted Ryan to introduce me. Okay. Well, as you said, I'm in the Price College of Business in the Division of Marketing and Supply Chain. I teach exclusively on the marketing side. I teach digital marketing, social media marketing, and a nonprofit marketing class. And the three are all intrinsically tied together in many, many ways. I taught the very first class that we had in the division in digital marketing, and I think we had 20 students in the class. And now we have 4 sections that incorporate almost 300 students depending on the semester. It has just exploded because it is the direction everything is going. We have a full digital marketing minor in the division now, and getting ready to launch actually starting this month, a certificate at the graduate level in digital marketing, which is a 6-course sequence, and hopes to even go beyond that. But it's been a fascinating roller coaster because every semester is different. I am constantly having to read, retool, relearn. Algorithms change just about the time you figure them out. And so if you like to stay on top of your feet, it's a great industry to be in.
Right. It never ends.
It's never boring. It's never boring.
Why is your field, you said, blown up? Why is that?
It's just, back when, and we still have advertising agencies and public relations agencies and stuff, but everything's digital, right? You still need strategy. Strategy is actually really key. And I think that's where a lot of employers and businesses, especially the ones that don't have the big budgets and the big staffs, fall short, is that if you don't have a strategy, you've got to have a plan of some kind of what it is you're trying to accomplish with a specific campaign overall, whatever it is from a marketing standpoint. But it's just, look at the explosion of social media. Look at the explosion of what happens when you go online to do searches. Look at the explosion of AI. It's all digital. And, we've got to try and find a way to understand it at the same speed that it's changing.
Yeah, and to stay ahead of it. So,
and to try and stay ahead of it.
As you look ahead to 2025, if you had to rank your 3 predictions, what's number 1? What are you most sure about?
I am well, first of all, AI is not going to go away. It's only going to continue to explode, and it's going to change, and it's going to morph, and it's going to become different things, and it's going to be integrated into everything in and beyond just marketing, as you were saying in part of your list. But I think there is going to, especially from the consumer level, there is going to become a type of AI fatigue, right? Because we're just going to be spending so much trying to decipher what's real from what's AI generated. And I know the courts are wrestling even with that, right? Should AI generated content be labeled? We've got brands promising to take pledges about not using AI generated images or content, right? Dove is the first one that comes to my mind, taking these pledges. And so I think this AI fatigue, along with the continued AI explosion, it's sort of my first prediction in terms of what we're going to have to deal with as consumers and as marketers, because as marketers, we're going to have to remember that consumers are trying to process all of this and trying to sort through the what's real, what's fake, what do I believe, what do I not believe. But, that might be sort of my area of prediction 1, but you're going to find that my 3 are all very intrinsically tied, because you can't talk about any one aspect of marketing, and especially digital marketing, without them being connected.
Excellent. What was prediction number 2?
So prediction number 2 is this idea of, very broadly, authenticity, right? Transparency, right? And that carries over into this consumer-centric type of content. And again, goes back to AI, right? Being transparent, being authentic. I think we're going to see more and more of, I've read articles about brands wanting to not get away from influencers, but more true consumers. It was interesting when you were talking about these live shopping experiences, because it kind of ties into that, right? It seems like we always like these. I talk to my students about this, the benefit of these behind the scenes raw, real kinds of content, right? Because it shows something that's unfiltered. It shows what, quote, true, what experience is like. And I think that consumer focused type of content where it's real, it's authentic, and people don't believe it's a fake or an influencer who's being paid millions of dollars. I think that's where that comes into play. You've got, and brands have got to, even at all levels, small businesses, large businesses, the bigger the brand, the bigger the dollars, the more we might question it, right? In terms of motivation. So
Right.
I think that authenticity is critical.
So, Scott, one of the things that you had talked about in terms of journalism was the consumer needing to separate the wheat from the chaff and be able to trust whoever it was giving them the information. You and I have talked before about focus groups that have revealed that oftentimes the news consumer would less want to hear from an anchor than they would the producer behind the scenes, who they feel doesn't have the agenda. Dr. Gaddie, do you think that this could actually apply to news production in terms of, actually, there are a lot of influencers who were former journalists on your TikToks, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, delivering the news, not often as primary source reporters. It's secondary source. They're gathering it, they're curating it, they're analyzing it. But as they get separated from their corporate overlords, to, it's the term that came to mind, do they gain some credibility because they're on their own?
I think they probably do gain some credibility. I'll use kind of a similar analogy in talking about when we talk about, and again, this is sort of in customer focus, authenticity. One of the trends that I think will continue as in that vein is, I talk a lot about the benefit of a technique in marketing that I think is underused, especially by smaller businesses, which is employee advocacy, right? Letting the employee tell the story, the day in the life of the person who's working on the sales floor or in the bakery who's helping to make products or whatever. At a big corporate level, we tell students, look, on LinkedIn profiles, share what your corporate culture is about, share your employees' perspectives, let your employees talk about that community event that you sponsored where you went and volunteered somewhere, because it shows something about the corporate culture there. And as an outsider, if I'm applying for a job there, I know what I'm going to get in the interview, right? If I want to research and take a deep dive, I want to know what employees are doing, what they're thinking, what are they participating in, so that I get insight into that corporate culture, right? If you use this employee advocacy tool in your efforts, you get that, again, behind the scenes authenticity.
Yeah, Scott, I want to redo my predictions, because I think this is exactly right. One of the things that I'm fascinated by, and this was when I worked at Love's. We restarted a blog, and a lot of people said, "We're going to get the content." And at the time, this is before we were talking about workplace advocacy. I was like, "Let's tell the story of the 20,000 Love's employees working across the country." There are a number of companies who are developing employee programs. Some of them are mandating that their employees participate. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. However, others are sort of gamifying it and encouraging their employees to step out of the brand and tell the story of the company. And I think that's going to be a big deal for those who do it right.
I mean, again, we talk about it in terms of developing an employee advocacy program, incentivize, right? Maybe you get a gift certificate to your favorite restaurant, or maybe you get your choice of a day off, if it's a situation where you're having to request time off. Maybe just some little incentive that makes it worth, because when we also talk about employee advocacy as a part of some of what I tell students about, I'm like, it's an underrated tool, but people like to feel like their opinions are valued, and as an employee that they're valued. So you get a win-win, right? Customers get this inside behind the scenes look, and the employee feels like my employer values me.
Right. Another part of what you're talking about there is recruitment marketing. There are very few companies who do this well. I know here in Oklahoma City, you've got Paycom. They do it. I think they are one of the gold standards for doing recruitment marketing. Tegna does a great job of recruitment marketing. Hearst Television does a good job. You see it on LinkedIn. They're pumping up their employees. They're welcoming new employees. But everything internal is external. I remember Tom Love back in the day. I was external comms manager, and he said, "Ryan, I love you, However, external, not nearly as important as internal, because that internal communications really truly is external. And that's at the heart of recruitment marketing, which is what you're talking about. As employees tell those stories, other possible future employees look at those people and saying, I'm kind of like that person. I might thrive at this company also.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's, my students kind of look at me when I say employee advocacy. They're like, huh? When we've got all these other tools, I'm like, you have these employees. They're practically a quote, a free resource in many ways, but they're also one of your best assets. Take advantage of it.
All righty. Prediction number 3.
Oh, I think prediction number 3, again, in keeping with these other two, is, and there's no shortage of it. But it's going to be how we use it, and it's data, data, data. I mean, AI gives us so much data, right? And we can talk about this from a prediction standpoint in a lot of different ways, but we're just going to have to be smart and careful, but also curious about how we use our data, because we are going to be dealing in 2025 with, again, skepticism, people worried about increased concern as the trend we're on with privacy concerns. And as marketers and as people who have to try and reach these people, we got to wrestle with all those issues. The topic I close my semester with in digital marketing and in social media marketing is ethics. We have access to so much data as marketers, and AI is only making that easier to get. I have them, most of them have not seen it. A few of them have. I have them watch with me The Social Dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And they heard of it, but a lot of them hadn't seen it. And I really kind of gave them a curveball this time. I have never done this before, but the first time that for the first time this semester, last fall, when I showed it, I walked in the very first day and I said, okay, you're not going to need to take notes. I'm not going to test you. You're not going to be quizzed. But before we get started, I want you to put your phones face down and close your computers. And they all were like, oh my gosh, what is she going to make us do? And I made them just watch for 35, 40 minutes of The Social Dilemma. And when we finished, I said, okay, now before you can, don't open your computer, but pick up your phone. I said, how many notifications did you miss? Mm-hmm. Right? And how does that make you feel? Right? Because I said, The Social Dilemma, while it is a docudrama, I mean, and I get that, it's about how every click, every time you pause on a video, every time you pause on a piece of content is being tracked, right? And that's how they know what to feed you more of. And as we've got to be aware of all of this data and all of this information, and we've got to use it in a way that, again, is authentic, is transparent, but it's smart from the business side. I mean, if we're coming at it from the standpoint of marketers, we want to sell products. We want to sell goods and services. We want to convert these people. But how do we do that in a way that is responsible?
Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of who ought to be leading that effort? Should it be a government? Should it be marketers? Should it be an independent association?
I think brands gain a lot of credibility when they are transparent about how they will use information. So again, it goes back to steps they can take. That's in their control. I asked my students if they think that, Congress or somebody should mandate that AI generated content be labeled, right? And they're mixed on it, right? Because a lot of them are like, well, people know it's AI generated, or they think it's AI generated. And we start from that point of skepticism. But, as, kind of going back to politics, we're entering a new year, soon to be a new president, and we are likely going to be as polarized and as divided as ever as a country. And that's going to filter into social media, and that's going to filter into everything else. And people are going to need to know what they can trust. They're going to need to know what they can trust. And so to be able to, if brands can step forward and take the initiative, I think it bodes well for them. I think Dove gains some credibility. The other people who are doing it gain credibility when they say, this is our pledge. This is what we will do. Right. And if they stick to it, that helps them.
Mm-hmm. Dove is part of Procter & Gamble. It's a name drop, but I've got a buddy of mine named Scott, who is a brilliant marketer who's worked for Procter & Gamble for 25 years. I am not surprised at all that Dove is leading the way.
Well, all of their branding is about this, representation of ethnic differences, skin color, body types, and that is one of the issues that is at the core of this authenticity and not using AI generated, because it's linked to so many other things. And so why not in a health and beauty related industry take that stand?
Hey, could I ask Dr. Gaddie a question about the other way on brands? There was an event in New York City a month ago, and the data that has started to filter out, the data's always been there. It involves a little industry called health insurance. And anybody who's seen the response that has happened on social media out there to this murder of the family man, right? It has been, I've been stunned, but then part of me hasn't been stunned because you're starting to see advocates push that data out there. And when you look at denials versus profits, and nobody's fluffing this stuff up, right? I mean, we've got problems in this country healthcare wise. You take that industry, another industry that's going to be under fire. There should have been the predictions, Ryan. But you're this hyper processed food. We're now seeing the Ozempic effect, where a lot of these brands that pump out this crap, right, are starting to go, whoa, we're going to see Pop-Tart numbers going down, right? And so it's a very real situation. I mean, and health insurance companies going to be involved in this. So there's two industries that are under the gun, and the data doesn't help them.
Yep.
So if you're one of those brands, and, I've heard a fascinating podcast recently about where this hyper processed stuff started whenever that one of the cigarette companies bought Nabisco. And it was who knows better about creating addiction than cigarette companies, right? And so you've got these two industries that are under the gun, and the data hurts them. I mean, it's pretty hard to spin. You can look at those YouTube commercials, the ones, hey, you want to look like this in 12 days? Nobody believes that stuff, right?
No.
But you have all these videos on YouTube where you go behind the scenes. Well, now with health insurance and hyper-processed food, we're behind the curtain. So this is a test question for Dr. Gaddie. I mean, what do you do if you're an industry that's been laid bare? Now they got good lobbying, right? But still your brand is under fire and it's not made up numbers.
That incident in New York is tragic as it is. I mean, again, everyone knows, insurance, everyone has had those frustrations, right? Insurance claim denied, no real reason or a reason that doesn't make sense. And in the healthcare industry, we all have to have it, right? We've got to have health insurance. And so it's going to pick someone. And for many of us, it's dictated to us by our employer, right? In terms of who is the provider. You might have a choice of plans and choices of coverages or whatever, but it's not just like where we're going out and just picking at random because, I like this company better than this company. We have limited choices. And I think those companies are going to have to, because, one of the things that data started to show, and which we all know, is that AI is being used in processing these claims. Oh, doesn't meet this criteria, boom. Because an AI can process all of those claims and weed out ones for denial or approval far faster than a person can, right? So, yeah, it's going to be a part of the process. And I think, again, I'm not a health insurance industry expert. I actually, as part of the marketing and supply chain division, we have a couple of instructors who teach healthcare management and are experts who have been in the healthcare industry. And I was talking with some of them after that incident, and they're like, we all know these kinds of things happen. This was a person who just had one too many straws hit their back and decided to take matters into their own hands. Mm-hmm. We've all felt that frustration. So I think these companies are going to have to find a way to show that when they answer responses about claim approval or denials or whatever, that they can be as transparent as possible, about why or what were the grounds for it, or, because it's not like we're going to force them to start covering more and paying for more and approving more. They're going to watch their bottom line at the end of the day, and healthcare industry has so many other issues to deal with. AI is just a teensy tiny part of it.
It's almost as if in the AI world we often talk about human in the loop, but the healthcare industry is in desperate need of humanization. They need to bring people in there. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to get help on a 1-800 number or with a chat bot when you just want to talk to a human. The healthcare industry is one where you desperately need to connect humans with humans.
You can't get past the chatbot. You can't get past the automation. So yeah. I mean, yeah, there are times when the chatbot can do some things. It's not related to the healthcare industry, but I did a study abroad class with some students in Arezzo, Italy at our Arezzo campus this past summer, and we were at a company that does some fabrication and stuff like that. And they were talking about their use of chatbots. And I said, yeah, we use chatbots for people who send in questions, and the automation can respond to some basic things with some pre-done responses. And this is kind of almost a family size run business. This is not a big business. But they said once it reaches through a certain number of prompts, depending on what's being asked, it is fed to a person. It is fed to a person so a person can take over and work through the solution for that person who has the inquiry. That's the kind of thing the healthcare industry needs more of.
Well, it's going to be a fascinating year. It's outside the top three. My prediction is Democrats are going through this identity crisis right now. If they'll coalesce around this healthcare thing, and there's only Republicans have one vote in the House right now in the United States Congress, United States House of Representatives. And we know what happens every other year, right? The other guys take over. So it's going to be such a big story. And I just don't know, where it stops. When you start seeing an issue that has anger at its base, you can't ignore that.
The populist move would go to universal health care for all. Medicare, Medicaid for all. I remember when my mom passed away at the age of 79. But you know what? She didn't have to pay a lot of medical bills when she was in her 70s, and she spent a lot of time in the hospital. It's the greatest bargain in America, Medicare. And I may be getting Medicaid and Medicare mixed up. However, essentially, she was covered.
Well, as a Medicare recipient, once you get there, it's kind of nice. Getting there can be a problem. And especially if you have, people have to be really careful in terms of when you get that age, when you're at 65, you got to jump fast. Don't delay. It'll cost you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And that's the sort of thing that you have to know about. I mean, knowledge is power. And if you don't have the knowledge, then it's like your bank account.
Well, let's talk about the transparency that Dr. Gaddie was talking about, the humanization opportunity there, just to educate people about your healthcare strategy in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s. Nobody wants to think about that thing that all of a sudden happens that transforms your life for the worse, that causes you to go bankrupt. But a little bit of education and guidance would go a long way.
Right.
And if health insurance companies were to help people with that, I mean, they're going to have to find some really good consumer support because this is not going away soon.
That's right.
And when you start putting the profits in, people are not happy with billionaires and they're not happy with can't get coverage. And when you can't get coverage, you've been denied a $10,000 process and you look at the return and total capitalist here, right? And
right.
when you're making billions and billions of dollars and a little old lady can't get a, colonoscopy covered. It's not good.
That's a problem. Right.
Well, that sounds like that there's a lot of work to be done in 25. Anything revolutionary for either one of you that you see that's going to be happening? Not newsy, but just in terms of operating in terms of 25, besides maybe Tesla stock and viewer.
Yeah, I'll give you one. And this is one that will not please my former employer. I think the move from corporate where you're employed by a news station or a newsroom and going individual, especially in the field of weather, is going to become a thing. I think you're going to see chief meteorologists leave the perch. They're going to go out on their own. I've already heard about seasoned meteorologists starting their own companies and focusing on a region and focusing on all the digital components and making more money than they did with their corporate gigs. I think the individualization of employment has been happening for a long while. The gig economy, the fractional economy, I think in the news business, I saw Don Lemon's TikTok today, and I get it. Don Lemon was with CNN. He's already very, very well known. But I also ran into a young woman named Cheyenne who had a good audience and has a good audience building on all these social platforms. She has anchor voice. She's clearly worked in the business. She's got credibility. I think the individualization of journalism is going to become a thing.
Well, I'd say Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn think so.
That's right.
What do you think? Speaking of data, let me ask you this. What do you think MSNBC viewers' average age is? I can tell you what it is for Morning Joe. I looked it up. 70.
I would guess 60s.
Mm. And somebody watching Theo Vaughn, 35?
20s or 20s. Although Theo's 40. Yeah.
What does that tell us?
I don't know. Yeah, Theo's funny. I don't know that he's the brightest bulb on the planet, though.
Well, I'm not sure Rogan is either, but
Oh, right.
I don't know if it's the age of the people watching, it's who they are. And, and we touched on this when we did the election stuff, right? People watch what they watch because they want to be reinforced. I don't, there is an age component that is tied to it, but it's more about what you believe and what you value, right? And so regardless of your age, you're going to watch and listen to what reinforces you.
One of the things that I'll always give Joe Rogan credit for, aside from the fact that he was on the brilliant show News Radio, is that he's curious. He is curious to a fault. He'll entertain any discussion on any topic, no matter how crazy your theory is. But it's not because he's a wacko. It's because he's curious. And I think that actually would benefit journalism. It needs to be fenced a little bit. I mean, we probably shouldn't be talking about are demons actually aliens? It's probably not germane to any of our lives. However, it's a characteristic that I find kind of endearing, is that he really is like curious to a fault.
There's a lot of head blows there too. But let me ask you this, right? I mean, in something you've said before, which is this newsjacking, right? Only Elon Musk could come up with a terrorist attack using his truck and say, see how well built my truck is made. I mean, just think about that.
Right. Well, it's and I will tell you that can backfire. Dr. Gaddie, I don't know if you saw the Allstate response to that is a bad deal for them because it's going to come off like Bud Light. Essentially, the response felt very woke. It felt a little tone deaf. It didn't call out the terrorism. It didn't call out the bad guys. It wasn't empathetic to the right people. But so newsjacking, for corporations who want to inject themselves into the conversation, beware doing it and do it right. Otherwise, it could go badly real fast. Elon, he's rich enough that he doesn't care.
Yeah, no, he doesn't, but when we were talking, still more in the marketing realm, and I mean, when you made the comment about Pop-Tarts, I think, or very early on in our recording, I was thinking about the fact that with the bowl game, they went to the extent of putting painted sprinkles on the white sideline markers to reinforce the Pop-Tart brand. They got permission to do that. I mean, that's how deep level that marketing effort went.
Mm.
Yeah, there was more coverage of that Pop-Tarts bowl because what's going to be in the toaster this time?
Exactly.
I mean, it's
the use of the phrase "he is risen." Who's getting away with that except Pop-Tarts?
Right.
Yeah, that was surprising.
That was a choice. Yeah,
it was a choice.
What do y'all think the date is going to be that we see a really large record truck pulling a cyber truck away from Mar-a-Lago with an eviction? Because Musk is like, you're reading these stories right now that the guy won't leave, right? And so I can just see at some point, the egos are going, for those, I'm a big Kara Swisher fan, okay?
Yeah, same.
And nobody has insight into Musk like she does. and Scott Galloway, which is, if you don't listen to him, but Ryan Welton's why I listen to Pivot. Okay. And if you don't listen to Pivot, you're missing out. All right. And, she's going, listen, I know these guys, this ego at some point is going to, and if you saw that recently where he was at some group and they were talking to about Musk and Trump said, he's not going to be president. It's like, okay, all right, starting to feel it now. Now I'm wondering we should start a office pool on when he's going to kick Musk out of Mar-a-Lago. That's going to be that.
I don't know. That might have to be someone else's call.
I've got January 21. Anyway.
Maybe that's Melania's call. Maybe that's Melania's call is when Elon Musk gets kicked out.
Might be. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. I think we ought to talk many times this year, but we ought to revisit this at the end of the year and just see how close we got.
Yeah, absolutely. Post review, but along the way, because in 3 months from now, it will have changed.
That's right.
As Warner Wolf used to say, let's go to the videotape.
This whole landscape, especially when you start talking about AI and digital marketing efforts, it's kind of like the phrase we use with Oklahoma weather. Stand still for a second. It'll change.
Right.
And I think what we're all learning is that we can't stand still. We've got to keep moving and we got to keep up.
All right. Well, I'm hoping my Georgia Bulldogs do good this weekend against the Bears and then whoever else.
Or your Green Bay Packers?
Yeah. Got a lot of Bulldogs on the Packers.
There are a lot of them on that roster, yes.
So, well, and so with the Eagles. I mean, heaven's sakes. I mean, I don't know who's tied for that, but for people that ask me, hey, how do I find Ryan Welton's podcast? The answer would be
wherever you listen to podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, or through Apple Podcasts, through SoundCloud. I mean, just anywhere where you find podcasts, this will be up and available to you. We post the video on YouTube. We're going to chop it up and put it on social. It'll be pretty ubiquitous.
So we learned this.
That you're going to break it up into small parts, because that was another thing that I didn't tie into my predictions. But, we're in this world where we're seeing what we're calling zero click. We're worried about the clicks we're getting or not getting on Google or on social media. And so everything is coming back to these short little sound bites. How much value and how much content do you put in that short little snippet in case you don't get the click?
With no friction. Friction is bad.
Friction is very bad.
Which I should, at this point, particularly plug T-Mobile, because they told me that the iPhone 16 would have less friction than my SE. Okay. And I went back and they said, why? I said, too much friction. I can operate the button faster. And they gave it to me.
And wait a minute. You went from a Samsung to an iPhone?
No, I went from an SE, the button,
an SE,
to the no button, which my much younger wife and kids were like, oh, man, you got to get rid of the button. And I did for 30 days. All right. Worst 30 days of my life. And I actually sat down the other day and showed them with the button verse 16, less friction with the button.
Yeah.
So there you go. And now
you have friction, you have an unhappy customer.
Exactly. Right. And so my family now is like, we hadn't heard that friction. I'm like, okay. Sometimes the old dogs learn faster.
Mm-hmm.
But not bulldogs. No, bulldogs learned a little bit last night, but I'm sure that
They learned some things. They learned some things.
By the way, do Sooners play Georgia next year?
No, there's a 2-year hiatus, if you will,
the year
of them not being on the schedule. So the Sooners get another year before they have to play the Bulldogs.
How can
unless they need in a bowl matchup or a playoff.
Okay, when do we get Mississippi State, Ryan?
It will be the same thing. The schedules will get redone. This reminds me of Texas high school football, where the schedules essentially get redone every 2 years. And you just find out who you're going to play when. So next year, it's just Oppo of this year. Whoever we played at home, we play on the road, home. And then next year will be Georgia, Mississippi State, Florida, etc.
Because my neighbor, the OC, is at Mississippi State now. Now he's the head coach. So I was looking forward to that. Need to drive by every morning in the fall and, give it this. But anyway, we got to do better on that next year too.
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed this very, very much. Dr. Gaddie, anytime. By the way, your sweatshirt says one rice.
One price.
I bet it's one price. Yeah.
One price.
Nice. I kept thinking, is there a message about the owls? And I was...
Sure, maybe this logo is better. The OU Price College of Business.
Because there's just enough fold. It looked like one rice. And I thought...
It's one price. It is the Price College of Business branding and marketing to stay in keeping with there is only one OU. There is only one Oklahoma.
Love it.
Okay, sorry for the rice owls. Any cause of that Kim Gaddie had been revealing she was headed to Rice. It's not true.
Not true. I'm not headed to Rice. This would be a bad way for me to let my boss know that I was headed to.
Okay. We'll make a retraction really quick. Well, happy weekend. Bundle up. And we'll see you soon.
Bundle up, stay warm. And let's do it anytime because this is always lots of fun with you guys.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Gaddie. I appreciate it very, very much.
See you next time.
You've been listening to You Are the Media Now, a podcast about digital communications. Hosted by Scott Mitchell and Ryan Welton. You can find Scott at Mitchell Talks and Ryan at doabledigitalmedia.com. This episode was produced by Ryan Welton, and the theme music, Anaheim Blonde, was written and produced by Ryan Welton.